Hey everyone, Absolute Vending Machine here. This is the second devlog for Pumpice. Not too much happened, but this is just something that I want to do since there is still some considerable progress made, and you'll definitely see more progress made by the next devlog. Anyways, to start off for this devlog, I wanted to get the player up and running so that I could have that mostly done, and the first part of that was importing the model into a new Godot project, which for the most part went well, except not exactly. In the last video I mentioned using a UV project modifier and bones to animate the face planes so that when I import the model into Godot, I don't have to do any sort of animation tinkering like what I had to do for my last 3D project. But it turns out all of that was mostly redundant because the face planes didn't animate at all. So I asked in the Godot Discord help channels if there may be something I might have missed, and it turns out that the modifier that I used wasn't supported in Godot. The reason I thought that the modifier would work in the first place is because Godot has support for importing Blender files directly into the engine for easy updates and accurate implementation, and I thought that the modifier would be supported, but that didn't work out. Regardless, it was solvable, and the way that I went about doing that was not too hard, but it was still annoying. By taking the bone positions and getting references to the materials for the face generated by Godot, I was able to make some conditions for the bone positions and change the UV offset of those materials based on that. Next, I learned how to make a third-person character controller, but before I even started that, I also learned about finite state machines. If I had to be honest, this would have helped me so much with earlier projects like the Cave Story fan game if I went ahead and implemented it sooner, but we're here now and it's good that I understand it and can now implement it into a project like this. Anyways, for the third-person character controller, there are a couple of main elements, the character controller itself and the camera. Surprisingly, at least to me, was that the camera was the easiest thing to figure out. Simply put, we translate the difference in mouse movement, which is a vector 2, and affect a camera 3D that pivots around a center, which is the player. And we can also use a spring arm 3D to avoid clipping. It works great, and it's very simple. I could go ahead and lerp the camera, but depending on how I feel, I may go for a more linear feel when it comes to the game. As for the character controller, this was the hardest thing to figure out. When I tried to implement it for the first time, for the most part, the player would follow the direction of the mouse, but if I was looking at a certain range, then it would start veering off. I did some research to figure out how it worked, and after a lot of trial and error, I managed to create an okay character controller with some acceleration, which, still not my proudest work, but I'm glad that it works, as that's the most important thing. That's pretty much it for this devlog, but I wanted to cover a few final things before I end the video. You'll notice that there's a lack of smoothing or transition in the animations, and that the game also looks very low resolution. I plan to add some shaders to make the game look better and more N64 style, and if I feel like it, I may implement animation smoothing. But that's basically the whole reasoning behind that. Also, there's some missing animations, which I will implement in the next devlog, like jumping animations. But finally, my friend WaterNova is also going to be making some tracks for the game, so go check him out and stay tuned for the next devlog.